is the state of the nation. FUTURE Uganda. We are deliberate, we are reasonable, we are uncensored. The state of the nation with Ssali.
Welcome to the African Alumni Association. My name is Ssali, and this is the state of the nation. Before we start, we wish to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto African Alumni Association operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still home to many indigenous people from across the Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to operate on this land. It's a pleasure to see you guys again. Thank you so much for following the conversation. We are interrogating the Uganda we want amidst all the chaos, amidst all the events that are happening right now, amidst the torture, amidst the Geno's birthday celebration, amidst all other events that are happening every day on a daily basis. We must think critically over Uganda we want and how we want to get there. What do we envision? Which kind of Uganda do we envision? What do we need to do to get there? Last weekend, we talked about a lot of things. Mainly, we were interrogating the political question. Of course, it's going to take a long time. We did not complete that conversation, and we did not come up with concrete answers or steps on how to settle the political question. But it's not just the political question. There's also the social culture, the economic questions. Mainly, the economic questions touch upon directly the everyday person who is thinking about how they are going to take back, how they are going to facilitate their children going back to school. Most recently, the coffee farmers have been hit by now a law, and of course, a memorandum of understanding that severely takes power away from them. We all need to interrogate these questions carefully and figure out a way to circumvent the new laws and the bills that are being created. Without any further ado, in studio with me, I have Namata Susan, honorable to be in the future. Charles Katuramu and Ivan Bwowe. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, starting with Charles. Charles, welcome to the State of the Nation.
Thank you, Henry, once again, being here for the second time of the second weekend. I appreciate the opportunity. Charles Katuramu, University of Michigan, PhD candidate. Yeah, so we're here today to extend the conversation that we had last week, but mostly linking it back or cycling it back to the impacts on the socio-economic and cultural aspects of the country. So let's see how that goes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charles. Susan, can you introduce yourself? Susan, do you hear us?
Yes, I do. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Do you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Thank you so much for yet another opportunity to come here and dissect matters of national importance. I'm happy to meet you guys. I'm happy to meet you, Katuramu, Charles, virtually. I'm happy to meet the one and only Ivan Bwowe. Thank you so much. I'm Susan Namata. Henry calls me an economist, but I would rather call myself an activist, a political one for that matter. So Thank you for hosting me again, Henry. Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Honorable Namata Susan. Counsel Ivan Bwowe. Pleasure to see you. What's up? Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself. You are muted, so unmute yourself. I can't unmute you. There you go.
Thank you so much for unmuting me, and thank you so much for organizing this. I am glad to be here. What happens in the country bothers us, but either way, we are the ones that are supposed to sort this mess we somehow find ourselves under. So it's a pleasure being here with Katuramu, with you, Henry, and my sister Namata.
Thank you so much again for joining this conversation. Of course, some people think that talking is not important. I do think that we need to talk. We need to talk about these things. It is important for us to understand the thought processes of our leaders, the custodians who govern our country. There are so many things that need to be interrogated, of course. I want to give Charles an opportunity to paint a picture of what's going on in the country. In his opinion, how he sees it, and tell us why he thinks this conversation is important. Of course, as a Ugandan, but also as a scholar who lives in the diaspora. And what are some of your thoughts on how you think, besides the political question that we still have that is pending, how should Ugandans of all different stripes engage in these conversations, and how can we turn these conversations into actionable actions, pretty much? Charles.
Right. Thank you so much, Henry. So, getting to that question, I'd like to return a little bit back on the conversation we had last weekend. And I think from the panelists we had here, we anonymously agreed that we have a very big challenge, which is the root of all these problems that we are seeing today. And we agreed that whether we want it or not, at least we should cause a conversation in some way or the other, of the different stakeholders of this country. And that way we shall be shaping an answer towards the question, the leadership question of the country, towards the minor sub-question, which is the transition question, okay? However, what you're saying now is all something that if you thought about that as a progress way or as a solution towards the problems we have as a country, you may think that, or you may end up losing hope, or you may think that that is inevitable. That cannot happen, okay? But if that doesn't happen, if the civic way fails to take place, if we fail to come, I remember we are benchmarking on Kenya's progress on that area, on that aspect, that they have managed to protect the constitutional order in a way that, in a civil way or in a more civil way, of course with challenges, okay, but at least they have not gone to worse turmoil like other countries. So if we fail to engage in that civic way, of course, when I say fail, the key stakeholders, if they fail to engage, if as a population we fail to push for that engagement in a civil way, then we may end up in a very big problem. So anchoring to that question, I want to read something from Egypt, an author called Aswan. So there was a question on why don't Egyptians rebel? And this question came up repeatedly inside Egypt and abroad. All the conditions in Egypt made the country ripe for a revolution. Hosni Mubarak had monopolized power for 30 years through rigged elections and was working to install his son, Gamal, as his successor. The level of corruption in government circles was unprecedented in the history of Egypt. A small group of businessmen, mostly friends of Gamal Mubarak, the son of Hosni Mubarak, had complete control of the Egyptian economy and were running it in their own interests. 40 million Egyptians, half of the population, were living below the poverty line. Egypt was in decline on every front, from health and education to the economy and foreign policy, matters that are important to this discussion today. A few rich people lived like kings in their palaces and resorts, moving around in private planes, while poor people were committing suicide because they could not support their families or dying in the crash to obtain cheap bread or bottles of cooking gas. The vast police apparatus that cost billions at the expense of Egyptians was one of the worst instruments of repression in the world. Everyday Egyptians were tortured in police stations, and in many cases, their wives and daughters were violated in front of them to make them confess to crimes that they never committed. Why did Egyptians rise up against all these injustices? There were three explanations for why there was no revolution. The first was that long repression had given Egyptians such a legacy of cowardice and submission that they would not rise up whatsoever happened. The second was that the revolution in Egypt was possible, but there were numerous factors standing in the way, such as severe repression, the lack of an organization able to lead the masses, and the fact that Egyptians were distracted by the need to make a living and were seeking individual solutions to the crisis.
Right.
Okay? As oppression and poverty grew more severe, many preferred to escape geographically and historically. Geographically, they moved to the oil states in the Gulf to work, usually in humiliating trades, so that they could come home with enough money to live a reasonable life. Others chose to travel in time, hanging onto the past and living in their imaginations in what they thought was the golden age of Islam. They were more gullibiers, grew long beards, and adopted the names of early Muslims in order to escape from the cruel reality of the present to the glories. I have not found a better representation or reflection of what is happening in Uganda today than this.
Right.
It was written in 2011. Before 2011, before the uprising against Hosni Mubarak. Okay. And everyone had been scared out. Everyone had been cowardized. They thought they could never stand against a regime that had oppressed them, that was living at the expense of several Egyptians. Okay. The few people, the few investors in the country were regime apologists, were regime-driven investors, that once the government collapsed, once the state collapsed, they would also collapse, and hence the economy would collapse. Okay.
Right.
The president was working towards supporting or getting his son into power after him. And all the bandits in the country were around the son to make sure that they can live the next good life when the son comes into power. Okay.
Leveraging the son's connection.
Hosni never lived to see that. Now, what we are causing Uganda today, okay, we can better skip that uprising that happened in Egypt. We can have a better solution than that. Okay. However, if we go and work against that civic way, that civic solution that we have a chance to engage with, we are going to force ourselves to that situation. Whether we want it or not, inevitably it will happen. Okay. So you may see the glamour, you may feel the pressure of, oh, this is going to happen the way they want it, but there will be a stop. How the stop comes, no one tells or no one knows about that.
Yeah.
So that's why for us, we are saying we can better avoid such a situation. Okay. Of course, today, when you read more about Egypt today, it's better than when Hosni was president. Okay. It is
even though it's still pretty much the status quo.
Yeah, but it's better because of the transition. You need that transition. Last time we were telling you that the importance of the transition is not because those who come after the others are going to do better. However, that gives an opportunity for us to hit a jackpot because of these several transitions that happen over the times. Okay.
Just like in Kenya.
Exactly. Just like in Kenya, just like it's happening in Ghana. Okay.
Yeah.
So we are missing the opportunity.
Zambia, or even Zambia.
Or even Zambia, exactly.
Yeah.
And we are failing to hit that jackpot. So there is someone blocking us from that opportunity. Okay. Now that comes back to our social welfare as individuals. Okay. And it's no difference. You've seen very many young people who would, I am part of and you said I can, you talked about how I come into this as a scholar. I am a population scientist. We are experiencing a demographic dividend in Uganda. And a demographic dividend is a situation where you have a very large population of young people. And if you do well, you thrive economically. There are countries that utilize that. One of them is Japan. There are countries that utilize that. One of them is South Korea. Now, you can miss it. It's not a must that once you have a very large population of young people, you're going to actually succeed in them, or you're going to actually benefit from them. You can actually miss the dividend. You can actually miss the economic opportunity from those young people.
Right.
Now, part of the aspects that lead you to benefit from such a big mass of young people is to invest in their education very well, to invest in their health very well, to invest in their security very well, and to create enough investments such that they can engage, okay, in those economic interests. Therefore, if you fail on those aspects, if you fail to engage those people economically, if you fail to invest in them and then later on see the returns from them, then you're failing as a country and you're missing the demographic dividend. You're missing that economic opportunity. And what we are seeing in Uganda today is a graduate who leaves the city or who leaves the country to go and work for 600 Ugandan shillings, 600,000 Ugandan shillings in the Arab Gulf.
In Dubai,
they even spend a year without being paid a coin. Okay.
Right.
There are many Ugandans in the Arab Gulf who wake up and sit, like you see Ugandans sitting at State Square without jobs. There are many Ugandans in the Arab Gulf who wake up every morning to sit. Okay. To sit and they're just looking up. Now the expo just recently ended, and many actually don't have jobs.
Yeah.
Okay. They are meandering around. And this is it's despair, right? Like they thought this was the only opportunity. They thought they would go out there, make some money, and come and live in their country harmoniously. That's not happening. Many Ugandans have moved out, not only in the Arab Gulf, but other countries, in search for the quest of that money to go back home and make a better living. But they have actually failed. Now, those are the individualistic solutions that we are seeking for now. And now we are trying to push. We have to come up as a population and push for more civic way
collective,
in seeing the transition happen over time, okay? Because those individualistic solutions won't take us anywhere. They will not. And same happens to the people who are leaders, okay? Who go ahead and have the opportunity but misuse the opportunity to seek their own selfish interests. Okay, and forget about the population of the masses. Those interests will not take the country anywhere. Now, we need to come up as a country to force this conversation happen. We need to come up as a country to force these engagements happen. Otherwise, we are going into turmoil. And for countries like Egypt, they were lucky. Yes, they went into a turmoil. Yes, they lost lives. Yes, there was a backlash in the economy, but they rose from that. Okay, and hopefully that solution was not for a while. Hopefully it keeps on. Hopefully the transition keeps going on. Otherwise, they would find themselves in the same position 40 years from today. Now,
let me interject there, especially with the case study of Egypt, where the civil there was a change because of the civil discord that happened in Egypt. And the most organized group, which was the Muslim Brotherhood, which led that civil unrest that led to the change of government. You find that group came into power, very organized, with a lot of scholars leading it. And now you look at that organization, it's nowhere in the picture whatsoever. Even though they were very organized. In Uganda, we have nothing like that. We are not even we do not have an organized group as good as the Muslim Brotherhood. When you look at Egypt, no, not Egypt, so Sudan. Look at Sudan. Similar civil unrest happened. There was a change of government, but then years later, it's still pretty much the status quo. So these transitions are happening, but then there's a way that the army comes back to establish themselves as the rightful leaders of those countries. How are we going to avoid those situations? Before I go to Ivan and then later to Susan.
Yeah, thank you, Henry. Shortly on that. That's why us who are causing this conversation, we are not soliciting that as a solution for the country. We are instead soliciting the civic way, because we know for the civic way, we can agree on many things and we commit to respect those agreements. Okay. Now, the other way comes as a surprise. And that's why we are saying that, well, you can block the civic engagements. You can block the conversations about transitions. You can block the issue of not making this a monarchy. Okay. But you will not block change when its time comes. Okay. However, the question is, what kind of change will it be? How will it happen? Those are very key questions.
Yeah.
And what we are saying is that we do not want to reach a stage of not being able to answer those questions. Then let's engage civically. Let's have these engagements from the people who do not agree with you, okay? And you who thinks you're the best to take over this country for the next 40 how many years? Let's agree and talk, okay? Let's know where the problem is. Let's identify that one of the biggest problems is the constitutional disorder. Let's agree to reinstate that and respect the agreements to that. Then institutions like the military or the army will also be brought on board, and they will have their role and they will know what they're supposed to play in such a manner. Now, once we fail to cause that to happen, then we shall find ourselves in the same situations like the countries I mentioned. I gave a case of Egypt, and I cautioned that unless it also goes out of the way and represses itself from going back to the Hosni Mubarak situation, they may stay in the same situation like for the next 40 years or 30 years, which is wrong. So yes, a transition happened. And yes, they are better way off now because the current state wants to make sure that it's different from what happened. Even in South Sudan, even though the current general or the current junta was part of Bashir, he wants to show the population that, because at the end of the day, even if you're a junta, even if you're a military dictator, you want to get the support, the local support, you want to initiate that grown support that, yes,
the citizenry support.
Yes, we are legitimate. So you need that legitimate support. So you create, and because of that, you're going to be forced to become a pro-person somewhere, which Museveni was at some point, right?
Yeah, in the beginning, yes.
Yes, in the beginning. So everyone will always be forced in that situation at some point. Now, the problem is after creating that legitimacy, okay, which brings about what you would call some short-lived relief for many of the population, then you go back to your tricks, or you go back to your what now in Uganda most people were with Museveni call dishonesty, call betrayal, call the unended revolution. Okay, because after he legitimized his love and support within the population, he later turned against the people, and that's also the dishonesty. Now, if
let's hear from Ivan, because Ivan wrote a very captivating article recently about the coffee issue. He says rightfully that he's a son, a product of the coffee. The coffee market in Uganda. We know that you have been, Charles has been talking about institutions here. We know that Uganda has been pulled out of the International Coffee Organization. We also know that they have recently signed what most people call a bogus memorandum of understanding with an Italian lady to monopolize the coffee market in Uganda. Ivan, as a product of the coffee market in Uganda, what are your thoughts after having heard what Katuramu says, Mr. Charles Katuramu says regarding what we need to do to create a functional government that works for the people, by the people, probably, for the people.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to clearly state that right now the biggest problem we have in Uganda is we have a governance problem that has culminated over time into a leadership crisis. That being so, we need to sort that problem. But in sorting so, we must be very cautious not to create another cycle that will lead us to where we are today. And one of the way to sort it out is to break fundamentally the role of the army into our Ugandan politics. And now that has moved from the politics to the economy, to health, literally to every sector of our society. And whereas it would be true to say that, whereas it would be valid and important if they were involving themselves in a way that facilitates civic engagement, in Uganda the reverse is true. We have their involvement that deprives people of the civic space, the economic freedom and liberty, in a way to make Ugandans beggars, just like the article that Katuramu read, the extract from the book that Katuramu read. And before growing up, we used to hear people say that omugagga tafugika, that a rich person is ungovernable. That being so, I was thinking about it over and over, more so when it came to the institution that were a pride of Uganda. Uganda is an agricultural country, and 80% are employed into the agricultural sector. But surprisingly, somehow, most of the decisions affect the 80% involved in agriculture. Therefore, creating a dependency chain that when an election cycle comes, a person is very sure they can secure a vote with 500 shillings. But with a bar of soap, a person can sell their vote for the next 5 years. It is also evident that because we find ourselves in such a situation, we are having a disempowered society. A society that is losing hope, a society that is gravitating into a space of hopelessness. But that said, it is not all gone. Even when the regime and in the present day, the Friends of Gamal in Uganda, controlling literally everything, including now the final assault on coffee. I want to tell you that these are not coincidences, as I wrote in that article. It has been a long plan. They've just been implementing it gradually. So when you face with a log regime, usually common sense is not their best common sense in a way of helping the masses is not their best gift. Even those who had common sense, when they are appointed or when they get to associate, they become greedy and they become vultures at the end of the day. That being said, it does not mean that these guys do not plan and are not willing to push through their plans. They do. But at the end of the day is how do we then organize and outpace them? Bearing in mind that they have coercive tools of the state that they're misusing to brutalize the society and the public.
They have mastered the art of arrogancy as a way of survival, of what will they do anyway? We have the guns, we have the money. What can they do? We are the ones who enter the contracts, but also you can decide on what they can do or what they do not. To an extent that they also, by far, can determine who lives and who dies.
Right.
So, bearing that in mind, then we have to be as bright as chittens in presence of in the presence of the olds. We also used to have a term called a miayo. We need to safeguard ourselves, but we have to be very deliberate. And this does not mean that that we are going to push onto the streets and do a Tahrir Square, as per se, what Egyptians did at Tahrir Square. Everyone can make a contribution, a tweet, a commentary. What we are having here today is part of it. But we also have to be very cautious that our plans remain with us, because they've created a gullible society that at some point, whereas we are in the fight to liberate our country in terms of giving it direction, in terms of leadership, the other person's aspiration is to have a meal. And rightfully so. And rightfully so. And if that is the case, then we must, one, safeguard those that are committed, one, identify them, safeguard them, and then we keep our plans intact. And that's the only way. There is nothing easy as defeating a rogue regime. There is nothing easy about it. But at the end of the day, we have to take the risks. We have to take the risks and do whatsoever we can in our individual capacities. And that collective is the only thing that can change the direction of this country. We are in a country that today there is a state visit. President Paul Kagame is in Uganda. And I think him having been here in the early 80s and 90s, I think he looks at Uganda and even touches his head in wonder. Because when you go to Rwanda, even when some people do not want comparison with Rwanda as a country, we have to be honest that it is an organized country, and Uganda is systematically and rightfully so disorganized on purpose. I do not know how many people die on our roads every day because of simple failure to enforce traffic rules. When it rains, it is disaster in our country because polythene bags are everywhere. And surely that does not need rocket science. It's leadership. And the other day I was chatting with a friend and I said, if you want to know the status of Uganda as a country, just be on the road, because it's a true representation of how disorganized, one, and on how poorly we are managed as a country. Simple things, littering, observance of traffic rules, discipline in leadership, discipline. Here, thieves are protected. In the country next door, thieves are punished.
Right.
So we cannot, surely we cannot argue, and I've heard people saying Rwanda is a small country, Uganda is a big country. I thought being a big country gave us an advantage to do much better. But this is not about the size of the country. No, it's not. It does nothing. And you can say that we've had all turbulent history. Uganda, we have been in wars and wars. Rwanda had a very terrible genocide.
Yeah.
You get.
And they bounce back. And I want to interject at that point, actually, before I invite Susan to give us her thoughts. You have mentioned something very fundamental. Uganda is systematically disorganized in comparison to Rwanda, which is very organized, and which for sure right now has become a model, literally, of East Africa, of the East African community, very organized, very clean. Most recently, it was chosen by the UK as the new hub for every refugee who applies to the UK. Apparently, the UK signed a memorandum of understanding to send all those refugees to Rwanda. Do you think that Mr. Museveni's regime has systematically crippled cultural institutions? Because prior to the Project Uganda, which was founded on pluralism, we did have cultural institutions which were very organized. Buganda, for example, had a Supreme Court of its own. Buganda had all these divisions, the Magombololas. All those Magombololas were very organized entities that organized the people within the Buganda jurisdiction, which is now called Central Uganda. Do you think it was Museveni's systematic move to cripple all cultural institutions and take away all the power that they had to develop their own entities? Because when you look at Toro, it was very well developed in its own realm. Bunyoro was very well developed in their own realm. Why is it that in the absence of those cultural institutions right now, we are sliding back into poverty and mismanagement of our own populations with a central government?
Thank you so much. I want to start from a historical perspective, that ordinarily and historically, republics do not thrive well with monarchs.
Yeah.
Talk of the events of the French Revolution. Talk of very many. Come here in Africa with Egypt, with Libya, with very many. Generally, republics do not thrive well with monarchs. That said, it's not true that actually some countries have not that in all republics cultural institutions are done away with, but substantially they are weakened. And part of it is that usually African strongmen clothe themselves with power as to the status of former kings. So in short, it is them that reign and therefore rule the population. And on this note, I would want to recommend that, if possible, and you can get a piece that was written in the 1990s towards the formation of the enactment of the Ugandan Constitution, called "Taming the President" by Professor Lokonyango. He discusses the post-colonial Uganda. The pre-colonial, not the post-colonial. He discusses the pre-colonial and connected it to where we were at that point, and predicted some of the mess we are seeing today here in the country. So, but generally, cultural institutions, in their true operation, held power in trust and exercised that trust for the benefit of the people. Today we have cultural institutions that are well respected, but there is little they can do in terms of directing policy in the country. And I'm not saying they're not trying; they're trying, but also they have the filibuster of the central government that assumes in the present day that there is a king and a crown prince of Uganda. Therefore, operating in such circumstances, in such an environment, becomes extremely very, very hard. And I want to connect this to I was analyzing about birthday celebrations.
Right.
We've had quite a number of birthday celebrations, and they've been centered on a social service delivery or a particular campaign. We've had birthday celebrations or campaigns focusing on HIV, focusing on fistula, focusing on tourism, focusing, you get.
Yeah.
But we also have the Mobutu kind of birthday celebrations that are instead a waste of
taxpayers' money, to be honest.
Public resources.
Yeah.
Just for people to dance to dance their hearts off, and also drink some beer and some fireworks. So it gives you the scope of priority vis-a-vis what these guys, the systematic disorganization, almost cutting through every aspect of our society. I think I've done justice to your question, my brother.
You did indeed. And I wonder what Susan thoughts are as we engage in this in this question of thinking about the Uganda we want and how we want to get there. As a young lady who is an activist yourself, who has been encouraging young ladies to engage in these conversations, what do you think we are missing? Do we know the Uganda we want? Have we defined it? And how do we get there? You can also extrapolate. You can also extrapolate from the conversations shared, the submission shared by both Charles and Ivan.
Okay, Henry, thank you so much for this opportunity once again. So the Uganda we want, basically everyone is going to tell you we want the Uganda with Museveni out of power. But then if he goes out of power, then what? What next? So we have to know what we want, how to get it, and how to maintain the status quo, how to maintain the Uganda if we eventually get there. So we have a governance issue, a governance problem, of course. Uganda basically is made up of 4 regions: the East, the Central, the Western, the East, and the Central West, East,
Northern.
And Northern, yeah, right. But when you look at the developmental scales of these regions, it's not at the same level. The Central and the West are doing better. The East and the North are doing worse. Their poverty levels are high. So where am I heading to? We've been under the unitary form of governance for so long, and it seems not to be working out. It seems not to be helping. The reason is, of course, the reasons we know. When someone gets into power, we know what they do. They are nepotic, the kleptocracy, everything they do. Because when you're approaching to the Western, when you're driving to the Western, you will see the kind of development there. It just answers your question. The kleptocracy, they plunder and organize their what? Their regions. When you come to the Central, of course, we've been working hard ever since the protectorate government days. So it's not news that at least we are striving. But then what happens to the North and the Eastern? Before independence, Buganda was known, the Central. I don't want to go cultural. I want it to be a regional bloc, not cultural. The federal system I want should be based on a regional block way, not cultural leaders. So Buganda used to be prominent in coffee. Then the eastern and northern, they used to do sugar canes and cotton. Then the western, they used to do tobacco growing. So I would think as time goes on, we should be developing, because basically Uganda is an agricultural state that we can't ponder on. It's an agricultural state because of the climate, because of the weather. So we have a comparative advantage. I would think that our government should make investments in these agricultural sectors, make investments in the agriculture sector, and make sure that people yield more from the agriculture. But no, we should be the cotton basket of East Africa. We could be the coffee basket of even Africa, because we have the fertile lands that are favorable for those crops. But no, why? It's the governance. Like Ivan said, there is a saying, the rich can't be governed. So they work very hard to make sure that we are poor, but that's being selfish. Why? Why should you treat people like that? The coffee, you called it an absurd agreement, making a one person, moreover a foreigner. I thought she's going to come with her money and invest. No, they're going to give her tax holidays. They're giving her even some money to invest. Why not choose a Ugandan to do that? Why choose an outsider to come and monopolize the coffee that is ours? All the things that they are doing, it's like it's deliberate to make sure that Ugandans go from poor to poorer. But that said, moving on, the irregularities, the imbalance in the health sectors, the education sector, the infrastructure sector, it's all absurd. And I think as a country, we should try another type of governance and see if we can solve this. I sit and ponder, and I think what these guys are thinking, the Tibhabura and crew, what are they thinking? Do they think they are going to create a self-proclaimed monarchy to rule us for life? And even if we want to negotiate power, are they willing to sit on the table with us and negotiate power? I don't think so. So Ugandans must be, we have to create more civic spaces like you guys have been suggesting. Yes, people don't know. People don't know what they are dealing with. People don't know the severity of the economy status of Uganda. They don't know the governance, the leadership issues. So we need to create more civic spaces to make these people aware that the things are not okay, and something should be done. I know for a fact revolutions, and we shouldn't suggest a revolution, more so violent revolutions, because we all know what comes out next. The few years after the revolution has been ended, a relief. So like, for example, in 1986, when Museveni has just gotten into power, it was all okay, and he couldn't even throw a birthday lavish party like he's doing right now, because history says that there was inflation, but he did what he could. He cut the government expenditure, like everyone. He did what a sane person could do to make things better. But what is he doing now? The country is starving. The country is in inflation. He's throwing a birthday party. I thought he wasn't aware. Of course, he was aware, but he wasn't in consent with it. But then I heard of today when he invited some, they call them the cream de cream, to come and celebrate the life of General Muhoozi at State House. All that is state money being used, being wasted, when people are practically starving, when the health sector is practically sinking, the education sector, you don't want to know. But we can't stay backward forever. They say Rome wasn't built in one day, but Uganda doesn't even have a foundation. We are just there hanging. We don't know what's next. When you come to the opposition that Uganda has, my God, I don't want to speak bad about it, but it's the reality. We can't even convince ourselves to come together. And we think we can convince a man who in his head doesn't even dream of one day not being in that chair, not being at the helm. So much has to be done. First, the elites, the elite, the opposition, we need to calm ourselves down. We need to know what needs to be done. We need to come together at a round table. Be real and practical. Otherwise, nothing is going to come out of this, because the president and his gang never dream of any day when they are not at the helm. Never. You see how General Muhoozi poses and all that arrogancy. They know they made it in life. They know there's no day that is going to come when they are not at the top. For them, it's already a monarchy, an autocratic monarchy.
So what conversation? What conversation do we engage in when we sit at the round table?
First of all, we should stop this tendency of bringing all these presidential candidates in elections. You bring like 10 people to contest against one. First of all, we need to set our priorities straight. But I know it's very hard for the Mahos, for the newly born Chagulanyi, for others. I know it's very hard for them to step aside for each other. So everyone thinks he has the better plans, he has the best for Uganda, but we have to calm ourselves down, understand that we can't, 10 people on a ballot can't fight one person. Of course, he'll continue beating us. He rigs, he does everything. We are not organized, we are disorganized. He will beat us until the end. He's going to organize an election, he's going to stand in 2026, and he's going to beat us again. We are disorganized, that's a fact. So conversations, have to tell people, if it reaches, if we have to tell these people to boycott elections, we tell them, don't vote. Don't vote, show the world that this is just a facade. It's just a farce. It's not an election, it's a farce. The old man just puts it up for his PR, but it's not real. We have many things to tell the community. It's just that it's either we are not ready or the disorganization is dismantling us.
Right. Mr. Charles Katuramu, having heard what you have heard from both comrades, of course, I'm pretty sure you also have thoughts on how we should engage, because now we need to look at solutions. What solutions? How should we engage in these conversations if we are going to engage in these conversations? Mr. Bwowe Ivan talked about individual citizens surrendering their rights to the country with just a bar of soap during an election, and then they give up their rights for 5 years. Of course, Honorable Namata has also told us that we need to be realistic. What are the real solutions? What are the realistic approaches to fostering a true transition of government?
Yes, thank you, Henry. So, in the current situation, you're either going to sit down and let an inevitable change take course, which you do not actually want to happen that way, because it will take you back to the same situation, okay? Or you're going to continue playing within the game, or being a participant in one's agenda, or you're actually going to rise up, get yourself organized, and set an agenda for yourself. And that's what we were saying last time. So the opposition, or the people who think that this country can do better than where it is today, okay, should come up, get organized, and push the conversation in a new direction. we should be able to set the agenda for the national conversation rather than what's happening now, where we are being a part of the person that you're actually complaining of, or that you're actually opposing, being part of the agenda and being a participant of the agenda. Okay, so what you see in the country today, of all the conversations we have, whether they're about governance or leadership or service delivery, are all a cause of who is in power. Okay, are all a cause of the person you deem not fit to run the country. Now, once he is able to put you in his agenda, once he is able to put you in his conversation, then the rest is history. You're doing nothing. You're doing nothing. You should be able to set that agenda. And that agenda is not going to be set. So for example, last time we were suggesting that who are the people, who are the stakeholders that need to cause this conversation, okay? Yes, we have people who are already at the front that you do not want to dismiss, okay? So Kyagulanyi obviously is not going to have an independent agenda and you think it's going to thrive alone. Because if you think, Mugisha Muntu, if you think that the country is going astray and basically is thinking in the same way, then what causes the reason of having two different agendas by two different people?
Right.
So these groups have to come together. They have to sit together.
Mm-hmm.
It is easier, actually, if they did so in that way. And last time we were saying that, how are they going to come together? And we're saying we need to push that as a population. So what is going to be the role of the media in this? We need to push for that possibility. Okay? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So once they come together, they need to, and like Susan was saying, put aside your egos, work on what you agree on together, resolve what you may not on what you may not agree on, and then set yourselves ready and organized to push this conversation moving forward. So if that doesn't happen, then you're probably going to see yourselves doing the same things that have been going on. Definitely, it's not being a prophet of doom or whatsoever, but anyone, any opposition figure or whatsoever, or party organization that may want to participate in the next year's, in the next season's elections, which is 2026, that is doom. That's nonsense, actually. Like Susan said, that's going to be lost. Okay? There is no reason whatsoever. You should rather have resources now, organize yourselves, then push this person to a limit of conversation, to a limit of a dialogue. Okay? So at least if that is caused, because you asked a good question last time, that how sure are you that this is going to result into what you want or what we want?
Exactly.
Yes, it may, and Susan hit on it. She said that, is he ready to actually have this discussion with them? Probably not. But yes, that's a thought before the action is taken. Can we organize? Can the opposition organizations organize themselves, set the agenda for the country, and then cause that conversation with the people in power? At least if they fail, it will be on record that they did that. Okay. Now that they need to do. Now, once they fail on doing that, they would have failed entirely, because whether they agree or not, they are not going to win the election whatsoever. Right. That they are not. So they need to get onto the other strategies. And of course, at least all of them have categorically come out clear that they cannot cause a transition that is full of life loss, that is full of property destruction, that's full of the country running back to the dogs. Okay. Now, some of them have not come to the intention or to the agreement that they cannot win the election. Now, at least I think the last election should be a pointer. At least now Besigye knows that he cannot win the election. Now, other people should know they will not win the election, whatsoever the case should be. Now, once that is known, then they need to get themselves together. They need to set that agenda. They do not need to play on the tones of the person they want to, of the person they think is actually running the country. Now, once you get into the Ulabalo that's going on right now, when they talk about electing the president in parliament, you start discussing that. When Moses runs a birthday, you go into that. When Vinci, who is them, is money for War Hospital, and you refuse to monitor that work in progress, you run into that. And when when he's given a second coffee deal, you want to run into that. That's already done. Okay, even a typical primary person knows it, that if at least I cannot get you into my home, okay?
Yeah.
Buy the food, then pay you to cook it, and then again pay you for the food when you serve it to me. You get what I'm trying to say?
Right.
I buy the raw food, I buy the gas, you cook it, I pay you to cook it, and then when you serve it to me like it is in a restaurant, I still pay for the plate you served me. This is what is happening in the coffee deal. This is the same thing that's happening in the Lubowa hospital. Now, it usually means these are using national capital to do personal investments.
Investments, yeah.
Yes, the Pinati woman and everything is trash. Like, it's ulabalo. It's not in existence. Okay. Now, if we want to go into that conversation, today we are at Lubowa Hospital. Tomorrow we are at the coffee deal. We are going to go into those for the next three decades, unless we cause a new conversation, unless we bring them to a new agenda. Okay.
Right.
Because for them, they always have what to say. They always have what to cause you into, and then you waste time on that. So we should know that all that is not going to stop. When the sugarcane project was a success, you know, today someone who the middleman between the farmer and the process of sugar gets more than the farmer. Okay, today in the eastern part where they have sugarcane. So that went, tobacco went, cotton went. Okay, now you have coffee, it's going to go. It's going to go. You have maize. Last time they had brought a fake deal. They will return it sometime. It's just a matter of time. They will return sometime for the maize. So everything is going to go. Now, it's not about us discussing these individual, say, mediocrities or suppressions that we are getting as people or as a population. It's a time to, like all colleagues are saying, that there's a very big question on governance. There's a very big question on leadership. So unless we do tackle that question, the rest we are dealing with fruits. So it's just a season, okay? Today the mangoes are ripe, and after 6 months they become ripe again. After another 6 months they become ripe again, and that's what is happening. Today it's the Lubowa hospital. The other day it's the coffee deal. The other time it's the sugar. The other time it's the maize. Okay, so
yeah. So someone was also telling me that we are still talking about those apples and oranges leaving, but we are also forgetting that very soon Malawi is going to become privatized, as well as, if we are not careful, Makerere University will become a private university. So if we are not more strategic, like you guys are saying, if we do not push the opposition leaders to come together and set a national agenda that we should all follow, including the man in power, come to the table on our agenda, not on his agenda, and decide where we want the country to proceed to or to progress to. We are in a game that we have already lost. We are playing a game that we have already lost.
Right. To reinforce the practical solutions, the practical things that are supposed to be done, at least now. Like I was saying last time, Henry. Now, yes, we have the agenda that is set. We have the opposition coming together. We need other institutions to come and play a role, because they are two very big stakeholders who were identifying stakeholders last time. Okay, we need the religious institutions to push for that national agenda. We need the cultural institutions to push for that national agenda. We need the social, the civic world, the NGOs, whatsoever.
The NGOs, yeah.
Yes, to push for that world, because we need sanity in the country. Okay. Now, if we have an agenda that is aimed at causing that sanity, then we should be able to push for that. And those are the stakeholders that need to come on board to push for that. And at least once that is failed, because you see, you do not need to worry about its failure when you have failed for the last 2 decades. Since 2001, in the quest of power, in the quest of a transition. So this is not something that you actually need 5 years to do. No. You do not need 5 years to do this. You did not need even 6 months or even a month to have the opposition be together in the 20 campaign. You did not need that, right? So why do you worry about the outcome of coming together here, right, and setting the national idea? You're actually wasting more resources in things that don't matter and things that will not lead you to the end goal that you want to, instead of focusing on probably trying out perspectives that could probably lead us to where we want. So the governance question is not going to be attended to by explaining on specific issues. Today, there are more issues that are going to come up. Trust me or not, they will come. We are not going to change course of the country by looking at specific issues. We need a national dialogue. We need a national conversation on governance. We need a national conversation on leadership and power, and the transition question and the constitutional order to be reinstated in the country. Once we do not have that conversation, then the rest is going to be history.
Do you think, and I think each and every one of you should have an opportunity to answer this question. Do you think it is important? Do you think a national Truth and Reconciliation Commission is a prerequisite to creating a national agenda and also coming on a table to discuss where the country should be, what the ideal Uganda should be, and how we should proceed on creating that space? Do you think a national Truth and Reconciliation Commission should happen? Because there are so many hurts that have happened. In 2016, people in Renzururu, Obakonzo, there are many people that were killed by the government institution that is the army. The Luwelo War has not; those conversations have not really happened. Over 500,000 people died in Luwelo. We never had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Should we do that? Something similar that happened in South Africa. Do we need to have a Truth and Reconciliation Commission?
I think yes, but I think that will be a byproduct of that conversation, of that national conversation.
Okay.
Some of the commitments we dwell to, we agree to. Okay. And there should be agreements and consensus on the end results, right? So some of this has happened in Rwanda because of the genocide and everything. Okay.
Right.
We can benchmark. Yes, we need it, but we need to first solve the puzzle, the key puzzle. And that should be, that National Reconciliation Forum should be like a byproduct of that, of the result of that puzzle. Because even if we agree on it today, and then we remain with the same structure, or
status quo,
the same status quo, then it will not come to rise. It will not come to rise. So
it looks like it looks like the state of the nation has set put up at least one item on the national agenda, which should be a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Like when the opposition leaders are setting up the agenda, that is one of the items they should consider that should come out of what those conversations later on.
A lot has happened in the country. A lot has happened in northern Uganda. A lot has happened in the Katuramu region. Okay,
exactly. Yeah,
you need it. However, you know that this was not done by a simultaneous process. This was done by individuals. This was caused by individuals. Therefore, as part of the process, you need to negotiate. You need to negotiate sometimes a win-win situation or not, in a way. So, because I told you last time that this process, when you're getting into such a process, a civic way, you do not think that you will, because even those who go to the military pathway, they know that you sometimes have to accept, okay, and lose some things for other things to go ahead, right? So it's the same case here. You need to accept that in some situations you have to be compromised, right? You compromise for the good of the country. You compromise for something, because yes, you can have the National Reconciliation Forum, but these are things that have been done by the people who are within the country today. So in a way, for them to agree to the cause of a transition, to the cause of a shift in the governance, then even when the reconciliation comes up, you're probably going to have issues of what happens to them, what happens to ABCD, you know? So you may not have adhesive repercussions to the folks that did so, because what you want to cause is for these people to agree that they are safe, even in circumstances where there's a shift, okay?
Right.
but you may agree on very significant aspects. What about compensations of significant,
Right.
and not just giving people money to go and eat, to go and buy food, but for example, the Renzuru, the whole institution was burnt down. Okay,
Yeah.
it is an important institution. It does significant work in the southwestern Uganda. What about reinstating that? Okay,
Right.
so different in the Karamoja region, a lot of minerals have been stolen away.
Plundered. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So how do you make sure that there would have been returns on those resources go back to the community to improve the community? How many schools are in the community? How many universities are in the community? Or how many people from the same region are accessing university education? Okay. So there are more. There is a more way we can cause just to happen than just saying that, okay, if Ereru was in command of what happened in Rizuru, therefore he should go and sleep in Rizura for the next 20 years or 30 years. And you do not know there is a big boy behind the Ereru who is key behind, who is key on the
decision.
Yes, but also the conversation of how you want to transform the country. Therefore, if he sees that his boys are going, he's likely to go against those conversations. You're likely to face a backlash on your agenda. So there are compromises we need to agree with, okay? And time will catch us up there to certain consequences. So yes, it should be, but how do we reframe it? That's right. That's the question we need to answer when the agenda is created.
When we come back, Ivan, you're going to tell us more about some of the solutions, because some people are saying that we have been saying this for years, right? We have been saying this for years. So if we're talking about solutions right now, these are actionable items that we should be engaging with. We're going to do A, B, C, D, and this is how we are going to do it. When we come back shortly, Ivan and Namata are going to tell us what your thoughts are in that.
This is the state of the nation. Irifa Mugwanga. We are deliberate, we are reasonable, we are uncensored. The state of the nation with Henry Ssali.
Welcome back. This is the state of the nation. Please follow us on Facebook. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. If you haven't yet subscribed on YouTube, please subscribe, share, and ask your colleagues to subscribe. This is where the conversations, national conversations, are happening. We need a transition, and we must talk about it. How do we get that transition? You and I must engage. Ivan, your thoughts on what concrete action items that should be on that agenda, if we are the ones to set that agenda, because it seems our elders are struggling to come together to set a national agenda and to invite the people who have the power to engage in this conversation. If you're one of those people, what are some of the items that you want on that agenda?
One, first and foremost, we need a national truth, reconciliation, and reconstruction. Those words are deliberate. We are a fractured society, and unfortunately, our fractures are the actual reasons as to why we cannot even unite on the simplest things. And that's unfortunate. So, fast forward, that needs to be done before anything. Because when we do not go through that, then we cannot go anywhere further. And I think by far we need to reorganize our governance structures, trim them down, reduce the cost of administration on the public. Three, we need to make corruption very expensive or very dangerous. And whereas there are arguments that it is useless to talk about what we need to put on the table without solving the immediate problem, but also going in blind without necessarily having a plan or not knowing what to do is why we are here today. Because, well, our fathers and our mothers and relatives, friends, generational colleagues went into the NRA war. But soon after, they started saying they were betrayed by their leader. So, saying that, and whereas some are saying they were betrayed by their leader, others wrote that the revolution is not finished. And whereas a few liberated themselves and are now subjugating the population, we must be steadfast and clear on what we want and where we want to go. Or else, even when a revolution happens, we might end up in the same cycle. There is this thing I usually hear that we do not want a violent revolution. Unfortunately, it is true Ugandans do not want any violent revolution or change of leadership or transition. But unfortunately, you and me might not have much to do with how peaceful that transition happens, because you are clinging onto nothing. You and me are clinging onto nothing. But there are people that have captured the state now that are willing to do anything to maintain the status quo. And what happens if they come after you? Should you sit and say, I do not want something violent, or you will use means possible to defend yourself, or even to preempt their actions? And considering our history, everything can be on table. However, it is the desire that we have a peaceful transition of power, because that is what we are longing for. But as time goes on, unfortunately, chances seem to dwindle and dwindle and dwindle, which is a sad occurrence. It is unfortunate, it is scary, and Ugandans, we should be worried about the fact that the doors of having a peaceful transition close and keep on closing every single day. Now, that said, one of the action points, let us talk, do the little we can, but also organize and organize. And when I talk about organization, I don't want to rely on political leaders. Unfortunately, we have a society of political leaders that enjoy the status quo. We have people comfortable of being opposition leaders. But because they are comfortable, the status quo actually works in their favor, because it provides what they need. So, whereas they are important, I would not, in my view, bet my all my fortune on them, because time and again they failed us. We have trusted them. They've sloganeered, gave us all the confidence, And at the end of the day, where it seems critical and the tipping point, they resort to their luxury. Am I saying they've not contributed? Definitely not. They've had a block. But at the moment, I think they cannot lead us there, in my view. And therefore, it has to be organization based on the citizens, not based on particular cult leaders or individuals that have actually failed to deliver where the country needs them most. And when I say deliver, I do not say, I do not want the public to think that I am meaning that they should go my way or my thought. But leadership, you choose to offer it no matter the risk.
Right.
Therefore, to some point, they failed us on leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're a leader, people expect your guidance. And words of leaders matter, and their actions speak louder than words. And therefore, failure to do particular actions or failures to speak a certain way and give direction, then means that you're failing the public.
Right.
Otherwise, I would not bet my fortune, as I've said, on the current leaders, either popular or unpopular, either written off or not written off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Susan, your thoughts as we think about some of the vital items that should be on that national agenda, the agenda that should be looked at as we conceptualize an ideal Uganda, the Uganda that we envision, the Uganda that we want. What are some of the items that you think are fundamental and should be on that national agenda? And who should you think? Who do you think should be the participants or the key stakeholders in putting together this agenda, but also to push it forward to ensure that the people in power right now, rightly so, engage in that conversation and come and participate in good faith?
Okay. First of all, we need to know why are we even here? Why are we discussing this? What has led us to these unending discussions of governance and other political leadership ideas? I would say that agenda should be, all stakeholders should be involved, the social, the political, the cultural, the religious, everyone should be called on board, because in every sector there is a need and there is a call for attention. The educationists, the women, the youth, because basically Uganda is made up of the youth. 78% of Ugandans are below the age of 30 years. So they should be more involved in the agenda making, because they know what they know what they need, they know what they strive through. So in making all these agendas, the youth should be consulted widely. First of all, when making this agenda, we should recognize the sanctity of the Constitution. We should put back the Constitution in its formal or its previous order. Why? We are here talking about this because of the tamperings, the on and on tamperings of the Constitution, changing the clauses that could help us or could have helped us to avoid all this. When someone stays in power for too long, first of all, they become addicted. They become magnetically attracted to power. They can't attach themselves off of it. They want it. They even want it the more. So the Constitution stated there were 2 terms, presidential tenure. There are 2, 3.
Two.
It's just enough. It's when you think about it, a person should be president only for those 2 terms. It's just enough. And when we are making this agenda, we should make sure we go back and redo that clause. We put it back in so that we avoid this. We avoid this autocratic nature of people, because trust me and you, if another person comes into power, tests it, gets attached to it, he won't. Even if it's Chagulanyi, he won't get away from it. Power is so addictive. Even if it's me, something needs to be limiting us. And that was the constitution. I don't know if you can put guardians or that can safeguard those clauses that limit presidential term limits. But if you can do that, those clauses shouldn't be tampered with. If they are reinstated, they shouldn't be tampered with ever, because that's why we are here. So right. I would suggest that part of my agenda. Then next, we should know how to uplift the youth. Uganda has many youth. The future is talent and ICT. But in Uganda right now, we are still having a debate on whether children should have gadgets in school or not. We are in the 21st century, for crying out loud. People are moving fast. For us, we are debating to be below. We are debating if we should allow children in class with gadgets. My God. This is so saddening. Children, of course, kids should be with gadgets in school. Gadgets have a vast of information they can use. The world is going ICT, the world is talent. We should, the agenda should focus on how to uplift the youth, how to make sure they unleash their talents in different dimensions, in different diversities. If it's the arts, if it's the sports, if it's in the administration, if it's in mechanics, if it's in anything. Why shouldn't we storm the Olympics? Why should we only take two athletics and one boxer who even finds his way out of the game? We should be very, very deliberate on making sure the youth are planned for. That should be another major point in the agenda to be drawn, so that the youth help in the product. Because when you hear of a population, mostly of the youth, one thing that comes into your mind is productivity. But in Uganda, the productivity is low. The youth are not coming out. Why? Because the incentives to help them come out are not there. We don't have the arenas to help these youth unleash what they can do best. That's why they keep being unemployed. They keep being poor. And in fact, you're going to be poorer if you're not deliberate enough to do what needs to be done. That's all, Henry.
All right. Okay, so Charles.
Yes.
As we wrap up this conversation, and I think this is very important for us. You have heard your colleagues what they have said. We have attempted, of course, as always, to agree. I think at least we have agreed that the issue here is governance, and we have also agreed that we cannot have a stable economy, we cannot have thriving socio-cultural entities without proper governance, without good governance. This is something that everyone seems to be agreeing upon. As we wrap up this conversation, and I want you to be very deliberate in this. Do you think some of the ideas we have shared that should be on that national agenda, how realistic are they? How practical are they? And how do we, the citizenry, push each other, including the politicians that lead us within our respective entities, to adopt this approach, as opposed to whining about each and every this did, that the government engages with in government today to come up with a proper, concrete national agenda that should lead in the engagement of bringing about proper change and transition in Uganda.
Now, Henry, you see most of the things actually we are saying, or actually what we want to be in the agenda and what we want the stakeholders to pay a key eye on are partly existing today, okay? But there is a mismatch. If we're talking about the education sector, if we're talking about the health sector, some of the things that can make these better spheres are in existence today. The question is, what is being done to see that actually that is achieved? And the answer is the reverse. It is nothing is being done on that. Okay, we are, for example, just targeting the wrong things. Okay, so when you hear about people calling upon the government, Susan was suggesting to empower
the youth,
the youth, to empower the people, the farmers, because Uganda is largely agriculture and everything.
Yeah.
We have had things that have been practical before in that country that have worked. We have had cooperatives that have really worked. Okay, when Ivan wrote that article, having grown up from a coffee background, the time when he grew up or the time when he came to this world and now, okay, that person who fathered him then, if he's in existence today and if he remained in the same business, you'd actually be surprised that he is doing way worse today than even when the situations were bad then. Okay?
Yeah.
So these are things that came in and just disrupted everything. But we can, they have been ideas. There have been solicitations from the public, from the populations, from key stakeholders that have been designed to work for this country. There is a big mismatch on whether what we are doing is actually resulting into implementation of that. Okay. Look at the disorder, the disorder within the constitutionalism. Okay. The constitution we had prior to 2005 was a very good constitution. Many would agree. Okay. Mm-hmm. It is just the will to respect that and to implement it that has caused the disarray that we have in the country about constitutionalism, right? So these are practical, but the question of the will, the willingness, okay, that will is important. And that's why what we are arguing is, and that's why I always re-echo that the next person may actually be worse than Museveni or the past governments. But at least can we have that one commitment that we shall have that transition happening over time, and at some point we hit a jackpot. Okay. Mm-hmm. So most of these things that we're saying are not new. They have been done elsewhere. They have been done before in our own country, and they can be achieved. However, what is that will among the people who will be steering that country forward? Do they have that willingness to commit to those targets such that they can be achieved or not?
Mm.
So the willingness from the people steering the country is very key. And that's for me why I was telling you last time that even when it comes to things like corruption, I think Ivan was saying we should make corruption very expensive.
Yeah.
Last time I was telling you that about, for example, corruption. It's not just about the government. It's not just about it. That today, the people living or thriving on corruption, most of them are our siblings, our sisters, our parents. Yes.
Right.
Today in Uganda, you do not need to be an NRM to thrive on corruption. Okay? You don't need to be. You'd actually be surprised that some of the people who have over the time achieved or thrived on corruption actually very much want this government to go away. Okay? So the population also has a very big role to play within itself. They need to check. Yes, the government is very crucial, okay, but today in the current society, world over, there are things you are not going to do to repress certain behaviors, whereby you also need the population itself to check in. Okay, because you're not going to shoot down a person because of corruption, probably. Then that's when you're going to chase yourselves up and down with the human rights and everything and all that. Okay.
Yeah.
So they have a right to the legal, issues. They have that right. They can actually prove themselves not guilty and everything. But if you realize that that's the way to go, then you also need to work on other strategies. It can't be one strategy. It cannot just be government alone in this issue. It has even the population has to take calls. When you hear about talking about you see Susan's intention about the youth or the young people and everything. Today, young people are in school. Okay, of course, not within the best circumstances, and of course, not everywhere in the world that they are best circumstances. But what we are saying is that it's not about the other world; it is about us. And if we can do better, then let's do that better. Okay.
Yeah.
So today we have very many people in school, and they are not, of course, not in the best circumstances. But even those in school, in the current circumstances, there are things that parents have left. Okay, there are things that society has given up on. Okay, some of the things we argue, the quality of graduates we release, are partly explained by who raised that child, what was their role, okay, and as well as the university that they go to or the schools that they went to. Okay, as you blame the school from focusing on grades and everything, there is also a parent who is focused on that, who is seeing their child get A, okay, and going to a university. Yet there are schools that are focused on the learning and not the passing. And the parent decides to overlook that school and take the child or their daughter or son in the other school, right? So some of these issues are not, although the government is a very big stakeholder, some of them are not just going to be resolved by just an act of government. You have very many people today who are graduates from university and cannot write an email.
Right.
So that is also, it may be partly explained by the quality of the government, but it's also largely explained by this student and themselves, because those are soft skills.
There's no familiar background. Yeah.
There's no syllabus on email writing.
No.
No one teaches you about where to put the subject and where to put the body of the email. These are small things that today still matter in the world over. I can assure you there is a lot of unemployment in Uganda. But I can also assure you that if you had a project today, some of us here may have had these projects. If you had a project today and you're looking for people to work with, you can actually fail to get some people. You can fail to get people to work with for some of the works, and you actually get a chance to talk to some people, and they are not employable. Their quality is low. It's not just explained by the government. It's not just explained by the education system, but it's also reversed. So it is. I'm not taking away the responsibility of the government. I'm not taking away the responsibility of our institutions or sectors. But what I'm saying is that alone will not see the Uganda we need or the Uganda we want. Okay? So beyond the change of power, and that's why you asked the question, are these targets achievable? Are they practical in today's world?
Yeah.
Now I'm talking about what else is to be done to make sure that these targets can be practical. So if you are proposing all these transitions in the systems, we need to also identify that who are stakeholders to make sure that these are implemented in the way they are supposed to be implemented. Okay, so parents should not think that the government is everything. Schools or institutions should not only look up to governments. Here we have government institutions. We have government institutions in the outside world. In the world, so many people think that maybe they are democratically prevailing or thriving, and they are doing well. But institutions do not just look at governments, for example, to achieve the goals they want to achieve. Okay, so there are more. You as an institution, you understand yourselves better. You understand your objectives better, and you need to derive or you need to steer that institution towards that achievement. Of course, the role of the government should be to enhance a foundation, an environment that can enable you to achieve those goals once you propose certain things. But when someone proposes something in Makerere University because it's not NRM, is going to spend the 5 years of being a vice chancellor, being opposed by the government, or being repressed by the government. So now that's where we come out and decry the government. And you see such things when the government does a lot of repression against the population. It happens so that the population will put everything to it. Okay, your child was raped, it's the government. But this is a child you've been failing to make sure that he's in the home. I mean, they come back past midnight and they're 8 years. Okay, tomorrow he's hit on the head because he stole someone's phone, and you blame the government. But it's been since 6 years. He's been coming back at home at past 11 p.m. and then he's 17. So you cannot tell him whether to stay at home in the night or not. You have no powers over him. But this is something groomed over since he was 6 or 7. But the condition you're in, because you failed to get that money to educate this child, you failed to get that money to have an affordable housing, to live in a safe environment, you're going to put it to government at the end of the day, even when you're partly responsible. So continuous repressions of governments against their populations will cause the population to think that every problem in society is up to the government, to think that they have no role on whatever is happening in society, on whatever is happening to them, and to think that it's up to the government for everything. So what you're seeing today is not just happening by mistake. It's not that Ugandans are lazy, that they behave that way, that they will call up government on everything. No, the government has pushed them to the wall to think so, or to call them on everything that even requires their action. So that is mandatory for us to achieve that agenda, to achieve those targets. We need to identify, and of course, these are part also institutions by government. You need to make sure that you wake up the population for their good. If there is a change, of course, like you're getting a population that is running in a disarray, then you need to bring it back to course. Of course, a population going disarray is partly some of the huge problems that government has to counter, the unemployment issues. If you have very many people who are doing nothing over the day, then that's what you're going to see. So we need to work together, definitely. The country needs to come back. We need to have a united country. What we have now is that everyone is trying to survive in a very disorganized state. And that's why you see whatever you're seeing. So in Uganda, we want to make sure that once an agenda is set, every one of us has a responsibility and a role to make sure that that agenda is achieved.
Thank you so much, Mr. Charles Katuramu. Namata, I think you should go next, and then Ivan will come later. Your thoughts on how the agenda should, how practical the agenda should be, and some of the steps that we should take. Namata, do you hear us?
Hello?
Yes.
Hello.
Yeah.
The network is on and off. I don't know if it's me or.
Yeah, you should go next.
It's okay
and
now?
yeah, you should go next.
Okay. So my worry today, the parenting, I'm going to go back to the social factor. The parenting of kids nowadays is going astray. Our kids are being parenting is becoming I don't know how to phrase it, but parents they think they love these kids more, but they are spoiling them in return. So I understand, we all understand we want a better Uganda, we want a new Uganda. But then again, if we have a country filled with immorality, with immoral human beings, we are not going to achieve anything. So we have to go back to the drawing board. We have to go back to how we are supposed to parent kids properly. So we are complaining about corruption, we are complaining about theft, we are complaining about injustices, we are complaining about many things. But morally, if we are bringing up kids and we are taking them into the right steps or the right ways, I think we can avoid all this in future. A morally upright kid, it will be hard for him to be corrupt. That's what I think. A morally upright person, it will be hard for him to for example, in the courts of justice, it will be hard for him to be unfair. So we need to call these parents back to order. We see many youths on the streets. When you hear the words they utter, when you hear now you guys can agree with me on social media, basically. This generation of boys and girls, the words they utter on social media, you find asking yourself, do these people have parents? Are they groomed? So in however much we want a better Uganda, people have to get back to the drawing board. We have to change our parenting skills. We have to limit these kids, tell them to do the right things. I think even the agenda, writing the agenda, it won't be hard. Getting a new Uganda with responsible citizens won't be hard. That's my take, Henry.
Thank you so much, Namata. Ivan, your thoughts? Ivan, are you with us? You are muted. I'm not sure if you're speaking. Ivan, are you speaking? If you are speaking, you are muted. I can't see you, and I can't hear you.
Hello.
There you go.
I was not seeing the button, but that side. How do we find ourselves as a society here? And to me, I believe no matter how you choose to look at it, the social, the cultural, the economic, leadership is supposed to give direction and guide on very many things. Like, for example, a border person knows in Kigali that where there is a zebra crossing, that's where you cross the road from. And the border guy knows that at the zebra crossing, my tire should not be there. On that road, a border guy is keeping their helmets on, carrying one passenger, and the passenger also has an helmet. The role of leadership is to craft a particular way of life. But today, okay, let us now take it further. You find kids of 3 years being taken to school at 6 to do what? For heaven's sake. For kids to do what at that time? So at the end of the day, you expect that kid to have the ability to think well and to be all out in life and to be expressive, but you've deprived them of sleep. But also when they take them back home, they go with homework. And before you know, school is extended at home. So you cannot tell me that is not a policy issue. And you cannot tell me it is not affecting growth in any way. You know?
Right.
I want, this was an NRM chairperson, of which even in the most crude ways, I think I loved his way of doing things. Mutabazi, former chairperson Rengo. Many would disagree with the method he chose, but the purpose was clear. That you cannot be waking up to drink early in the morning.
Right.
And then you cry, you wake up drinking, and the only thing you're thinking about is making babies. You get, you educate them. You cannot be a serious man at home, or mother at home, or woman at home, and you do not have a pit latrine. You get, these are not hard things, and I want us to fall back and as where I swear this on leadership is that even in our culture setting. Leaders were instrumental in making sure that societal values are upheld. You remember, I came to Kampala in 2009. But growing up, my friend, we were children of the society.
Right.
You could not walk from school, from home to school when you're eating, and you're not punished. How? You had to greet elders. Simple things of life.
Right.
You know, you even had to press so hard that the person who has found you doing something wrong does not report your home. Because if they reported your home, then it will be double trouble.
Double chopate, yeah. True.
You get? So,
right.
And growing up in that setting, it shaped the way how we behave with others, how we relate in society, and how we act about situations. You know? Now we are in the life of Sagala Manya. You get? I don't want to know anything about anyone. I don't give a damn. But when those you do not want to give a damn on attack you, then you cry out to the public that you've been attacked. So I think society by far, leadership by far has an implication on almost every social thing. I was not there. I was not there during Amin's time. But I was told corruption was a serious crime. I was told corruption was a serious crime. I was told also that you would leave your bicycle there, and they would not steal it.
Just like in Japan.
South Korea, I mean, you leave your phone there and on the street, and you can find it hours after. You know? So, but what happened is that when you have poor leadership, corrupted leadership, by default, everything in society degenerates. You know?
Yeah.
So we need to address those things if we are to deal with the ethical and when we are to deal with the ethical and moral spine of our society. So that said, Uganda needs to be a serious project for us to get back on track. But one thing is for sure, that this junta is incapable of fixing what it has brought. Actually, the only thing they can do better is continuing to waste up this country more and more. And it's our obligation as the citizens to sort this mess. Thank you.
Thank you so much again for sharing these very important insights. All of you have shared very important insights on this conversation today. Of course, this conversation is not ending today. I think in future episodes, we shall be interrogating, setting the agenda, or trying to be deliberate and intentional in what we choose to do as we advocate for a better Uganda. One thing I have noticed, especially as we have been engaging with the social culture aspect of rebuilding a better Uganda or an ideal Uganda, is the fact that this is not about just politicians. It is also about us, the citizens. The responsibility also falls on us to ensure that we bring about a better Uganda. And the way we can do that is by ourselves being responsible and ensure that if we do know of any of our relatives doing the corruption, we have the courage to tell them that what they are doing is not right, and therefore they should be mindful on how they govern themselves before we bring in the government or the politicians to condemn them on how our government should be. I think there's a clip that insinuates on the same ideas from the army spokesperson, saying that whatever is gone wrong in our country is not just a job of the government, but it's also a job of the people that are in these positions. Before we close, let me show you a little bit of this clip, and then we shall close later. I don't know why it's not showing. It should be playing, but it's not. Okay. I'm not sure why it's not playing. Just a moment. Yeah, but I think this was Geno Bantari's. Is that Geno? Just a moment. Let's see. Okay, fine. So what I'm going to do, I know we are. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it in a different format because it doesn't seem to work that way here. So let me see if I can bring it in using a different format. Hopefully it can come in and then you can listen to it. Perhaps get to hear what Bantarisa is saying, especially in the first 2 minutes of the first 90 minutes of the conversation. He really implicates us. He implicates our siblings. He implicates our parents. He implicates all the ordinary citizens in saying that we are responsible for what is going on in that country. Our parents are responsible. Our sisters and brothers are responsible. We should therefore not just look at government to make things right, but we should indeed have the courage to make things right.
Kanjwe tunene mu kamera. Tunule mu kamera eno. Gwakere ncha nolinnya motoka ya government. Nogera mu ofisi ya government. Notaweereza batuuze. Oli mubbi, oli munyazi, olide mu nsi y'olukwe. Aliwo bakikola? Of course. Okedde ncha nogenda mu ofisi oyina ensonga z'olina okukolako notazikolako. Oli musawo, oli musomesa, oli w'amagye, oli wa poliisi, oli wa byamakomera, oli minisita, oli permanent secretary, oli member wa parliament. Ffenna tukwata ssente ya muwa musolo. Amafuta tukuvuga ga government. Emmotoka tuvuga za government. Lwaki tukaba service delivery? Kiva ku bantu abo. Eri kivaawo. Baganda baffe, bakitaffe, banyinaffe. Be bakola bino. Be batulira munda ng'ensekere. Bwe tutayogereko. Oli w'amagye afande.
All right, you can hear the frustration. So in 60 seconds, each of you wrap up responding to what Bantariza has said. Let us wrap up this conversation, and I want to thank you once again for being here today. I'm going to start with Namata. Namata, do you still hear us? In 60 seconds, unmute yourself and wrap up.
Yeah, hello.
Yes.
I'm on.
Yeah.
General Gabadde Mukambwe tasalikako musali, but he's right. He's right. Those people in those offices, my God. So anyways, Henry, first of all, thank you for hosting me again. Thank you for these spaces. At least we get to unleash, to talk about issues I hope one day we see some results. I hope and I pray one day we see some results. So let's keep on pushing. Let's keep on the civic spaces, educating Ugandans, telling them where necessary what's supposed to be done, telling them not necessarily what they want to hear, but rather what they need to hear, the right things. Let's take the discussions open. Let us leave the discussions open, include everyone, and let us ensure we fight, we don't give up, so that we get a better Uganda. Otherwise, we are still in trouble. We are still in trouble. Let us, I don't know how we're supposed to do this, but we have a tendency of making leaders, turning them into demigods. Onutasobia, that is bad. I don't know how we are going to educate the masses that leaders in fact fault and they need to be guided. This thing of Onutasobia Tagambwa Kotakolachi, then he becomes a demigod. All of a sudden, we are grooming a baby dictator. All of a sudden, they are not right. We need to tell people that leaders fault and need to be guided. And to make a country a better one, we all have to know what our roles to play, what to do, what to say, and everything. So Henry, thank you so much. Keep up with the space. I'm also going to introduce a new. I'm going to give you a number of my friend. She wants to come on this space and discuss some few things. I hope you accept her. And I'm so happy to meet Charles. I'm so happy to meet Bwowe. Yes, thank you, Henry.
Thank you so much again for coming and joining us here today. Bwowe, Mr. Ivan Bwowe. 60 seconds, wrap up. Unmute yourself and wrap up. You can respond, you can react or respond to the general's sentiments. There.
Adding a word would be to distort his information. However, I just do not like the way they elude responsibility as those in power.
Right.
And as I've argued, is that all these things have to have something to do with leadership. So I would not take him off the hook for that.
Right. Especially given that he has been in working with this government for a very long time, and he did not come out when his colleague General Tinyefunza came out to alert us about the Muhoozi project. Some people are insinuating that all these generals who are coming out now are just frustrated that a young LDU imposter diplomat is being elevated ahead of them. I don't know; those are not my words. I'm just
all they are seeking placement.
There you go. Charles, wrap up this conversation. Let's wrap up this conversation.
Well, Kraije, well, the concept he drives home is what I and colleagues here have been, emphasizing that, there is a role that for each of us. When I entered on corruption, and I say that this is not done by strangers, right? These are people who have children, and when they go back home, these are children you discuss with. They are your peers you discuss with, and they actually agree that the country is not running as expected, right? But it is their parents it's our parents that were actually part of that problem. Now, the question, and I agree with Ivan, the question is, you need to do something. It's now why are you like me? Now for Kraije, probably he's not in the best position, but at least his peers are in position too. So why does he cry out like me? There should be something done. After identifying that, then what next? Okay. So now that's what makes him again. That's what points him to a weak spot, because yes, he knows the problem. but they are responsible for that. Okay. And I think on the issue of him not having come up earlier, all these guys that come up later, I think for me all of them are the same. Even when Sejusa came up, it was still a promise failed or an expectation failed. Even when even himself, it was just disgruntled of an expectation failed. So whenever they are together, and by the way, they will always go back. They can always sit down, right? They can always go back. So it's just expectations frustrated that make them come out and talk. So anyway, the most important thing that I want to take away here is that we all agree that the steering body has a lot to take control of or take responsibility of, and it is actually important, or it is okay to actually be blamed of how the population participates or how the population behaves. Okay, and that's why you realize that the biggest problem here, when we are talking and discussing and everything, we don't relate it back to the population. We take it back to those steering the country. So yes, the population has a role, like we've been discussing, like Ivan highlighted, and the example he gave on former chairman Mutabazi, like Susan highlighted on the nature of parenthood and family. But the steering body, like we have all agreed, is key in all this. These are all hugely explained by how a country is run, by those few that I would say that by those few we trusted, but now I didn't trust them with running the country. Yeah, but by those now who are running the country. So what Ugandans need to know, yes, we may have these conversations, we may push for these issues, we may push for what is supposed to be done, but even within our means, we need to do a lot. So we actually have to come up. It is beyond just the political leaders. Like Ivan said, these are people who can disappoint you tomorrow. Okay, so it's beyond just that. So the population needs to come up, and it takes a lot for that population to come up and to understand that actually we are being suppressed by this current group of people. So that for me, the key takeaway is the most appreciated thing about this conversation and last week's conversation is that, Henry, you recall before we started this 2 weeks episode, that we agreed that the problem is hugely governance, hugely constitutional disorder. And now you have seen it, that even when we say that we shall have a key discussion on the socio-economic and cultural affairs of the country, you've seen that the question has hugely surfaced. So that shows you that we are not lost in the conversation. Different people on board, but the ideas come and, cohere together. So that is very important, and I think it's a thing that needs to be pushed forward. It's a thing that, if solved, probably we shall see a lot of uprightness in the country.
Again, thank you so much for all your insights. It's always a pleasure to interact with great minds, even when it's tough to point out some of these flaws in the governance of our country. I am hopeful. I think having these conversations make me hopeful that one day Uganda is going to be a better place. We are going to be a better place, and I think we just need to continue pushing forward. We just need to continue having these conversations. It is important that we continue having these conversations, even when some people think that they are insignificant. I think they are actually adding a brick to the betterment of our country, and hopefully the people who should be in the steering committee, the politicians, the leaders of the oppositions, I hope they are going to come together and think about how to set a national agenda, how it should look like, and how it should push the establishment to actually sit on that round table and have these conversations. We shall continue having these conversations. We should probably think about real action items on how what should be on that agenda, and maybe we should try to involve some of the people at the front lines, the street level bureaucrats, the politicians themselves, the leaders, maybe we should invite them here and ask them what they have in mind beyond waiting for elections in 2016, because right now everyone seems to be waiting for 2026, which puzzles my mind, because if we do know that the establishment that we have today is not working in the best interest of the people, why do we have to wait for another 5 years? Why don't we have conversations that are going to disrupt this power that we think is not legitimate right now? There's a lot to say, but I'm not going to continue wasting your Sunday night, your Sunday evening, your Sunday afternoon. I want to thank you so much for joining us today, and we shall talk shortly.
This is the state of the nation. We are deliberate, we are reasonable, we are uncensored. The state of the nation with Ssali.